Hey, what's up everybody? Sorry I haven't posted a video in a while. Been busy working. Some of you may have caught on, but my 9 to 5 job, or actually 7 to 4, is I'm in the Air Force. I'm a military guy. So, past couple months I've been overseas. That's part of the job sometimes, and I got to go downrange and do some real work. So, um, yeah, I've been out of the country for a little bit, but now I am back, and still working on this project, still making progress slowly. Obviously, I haven't got a lot much done in the past couple months, but I'm still working on it. So this video is going to be an update, show you guys where I'm at and what I've learned. What's going on with the Camaro right now? Just a quick update on it. Basically, as you can tell, the 2.8 is not going back in here. I am putting this L83 in this car. Basically, the reasoning behind that is there's not a whole lot of aftermarket support for the 2.8. Injectors are the big thing. Exergy makes a 100% over set of injectors for this motor, and that's the largest I could find. I have been talking to a couple companies. It's surprising how few of them even respond, but I did talk to Exergy and didn't get a hold of them. They do make a set of 100% over. They are for sale. They're like $2,600 or something like that for a set of 4, but that's as big as they're willing to go. So unless the aftermarket decides to, step up and people start buying the 100% and show interest in the larger injectors, they will not be making anything larger than the 100%. So that being said, for all y'all that have tunes and you're making 210, 220, 230 horsepower or whatever with the stock injectors, basically take that times 2, and that's about as much as you can expect to get out of this motor without custom injectors. So the 400 450 range is about tops for this motor as far as what's available today. And that being said, that's why I'm not putting that motor in this car, because the motor that I pulled out of this car made 500 horsepower. So I'm not putting an engine that makes less horsepower than what I pulled out of it, if that makes sense. So I will be putting that motor, the Duramax, in the truck once I get it built. It's going to take some time. Like I said, those injectors are expensive. Everything else is expensive. So working on that. But let me show you where I'm at with that motor right now. Alright, so here's where the motor sits right now. Basically, when I got a hold of this motor, it was a complete long block. I got it tore down to basically a short block right now. It's upside down, but the cylinder head's pulled off. I didn't film a whole lot of this just because when I got this motor, the guy I got it from told me that when he pulled the drain plug off the pan, there's a bunch of metal that came out the drain plug, and said that it's probably a piston that's blowing up in here. So I didn't film a whole lot of it just because I didn't want to waste y'all's time, waste my time filming a blown up motor. But after I've torn this apart, come to find out, everything looks pretty good in here. Pretty solid. The pistons are still good. Let's see if I can get you in here. Basically, but trust me, they're all there. You can see down in here, it does have J-jets in there, oil squirters. All the pistons are there. This is just a stock motor. I don't know if this was tuned. I don't know the history of this motor at all. But like I said, I got it from a salvage yard. It did have a bunch of stuff inside it. When I say stuff, I mean not engine parts related. I pulled the cylinder head off, and the number 1 cylinder was full of sand, which is interesting. It makes me think that either this vehicle was in an accident and got a bunch of sand inside of it, or it was just sitting out in a field somewhere and got a bunch of sand inside. But it was inside the bowl, the piston bowl, combustion chamber. So it was weird. The only part that I found that's damaged on this motor is a turbocharger. The compressor wheel's all laid up. Get over here, I'll show you. If you can see that, the compressor wheel's all laid up. But anywho, alright, so I got this thing turned on its side here. I'll show you in here. Here's number 1 piston. 2. I have cleaned this up a little bit. I just took a rag in there and wiped it out. You can see there's a little bit of trash in there. There's not a hole, it's just trash. But I am going to be disassembling this motor the rest of the way. A couple caveats to tearing this motor apart. Ran into some special, unique situations. The Italians did a great job of designing this motor. But first one's going to be getting the timing belt off wasn't an issue. Getting the cylinder head off was a problem. So the first step I ran into, not really an issue, it's just the bolts for these cam caps are triple square. If you've never heard of triple square, it's basically a Torx bit, except it's got 12 points on it. That makes sense. I can't get this thing to focus. But just buy some triple square bits. I got some off Amazon, just some cheap ones, and they got these broke off. If you try to use a Torx bit on these, you will round them off and you will screw them up. So don't do that. I did degree this motor, or try to get the cam specs off this motor with a degree wheel and a dial indicator as best I could. But with that being said, I'll give you more on that here in a minute. But the next hiccup was with the cylinder head. As you can see, this is somewhat cleaned up. I just rinsed it off, try to get the oil out of here. But this head bolts, you can see there's 10 of them that go here. And I got 8 of them out with their 16 mil socket with a 1/2 inch drive. I got 8 of them out. 2 of them, giant pain. It was actually this one here and then this back one over here. That was a pain. But anyway, I'll show you what happened and why it was such a pain. Because I used, like I said, 1/2 inch drive sockets. I had 4 of them and I cracked every single one of them with the breaker bar. I did not use an impact on these. This is a 6-point, 1/2 inch drive, 16 mil socket. This one's a Craftsman. Split it right down the middle. This one was my next victim. This is a cheap Chinese socket. Did the exact same thing. This one was my next 6-point that I had. This is actually a spark plug socket. 1/2 inch drive as well. Also, as you can tell, split it. The last one I had was this 12-point. This is a Husky. Also split it down the middle. So, pretty neat. I ended up buying a 3/4 inch drive with a breaker bar and a 16 mil socket. It was not cheap, but that's what I had to do to get the others off. But like I said, I got 10 of these off, or I'm sorry, there's 10 bolts total. I got 8 off in the last 2 because I'd broken 4 sockets on the last 2 bolts. I had rounded them off, obviously. I was pulling so hard it broke the socket and then rounded off the head of the bolt. So what I had to do was, here's the head stud. I had to drill the end of the bolt off, or the head of the bolt off of here. So this was a bolt, a head bolt, and I just had to drill it out. And once I got the head of it off, this thing literally unscrewed from the block by hand. So it was literally the head of the bolt was seized, or not seized, but it was really tight against the head, and it was so tight that it broke 4 of my sockets. So crazy. And I had to do this for 2 of these bolts. Luckily I was already planning on tearing this motor apart, but if you're trying to pull the head studs off of this or pull the head bolts out and put studs in it, just be mindful. I don't know if it was because this motor had been sitting, I don't know how long it's been sitting, or if it was sitting at all, but just be mindful that you will have an issue, probably going to have an issue if you are in the same boat as me getting these off. All of them were a pain. These 2 just couldn't make it happen with the socket. Had to drill them out. That was the last pretty much big hurdle I had. These motors do have cam followers, so these go in here. These lifters go in these holes here, hydraulic lifters. This is a roller follower, and then here's the valves. So as you can probably tell the difference, these back ones here, the ones in the back row, those are the intakes. Front ones here are the exhaust. There's a bunch of junk on them. Like I said, I don't know if it looks like carbon buildup, but I don't know if that is from the EGR or what have you, what caused it. But That's where those are. And here's all the keepers and retainers and springs. These springs are really small. These are the valve springs. Super tiny. They're like 800 thousandths diameter, outside diameter. Installed height's like 1.5 inches. Intake valves and exhaust valve diameters are, the exhaust is a 1/150, or I'm sorry, a 1/250. No, I was right the first time. I'm sorry. 1/150 exhaust, 1/250 intakes. So keep that in mind. Let's flip this head on the back here so you can see the combustion chamber. It's a diesel, so it's just flat. But you see in there, there's the hole for the injector, and then you got the glow plugs. There's the glow plugs. Pretty simple, self-explanatory there. But I'll show you how I got it cleaned up. So I'm just a guy with a garage, and get one of these totes and fill it full of Purple Power and car wash soap, and it does a pretty good job of getting things cleaned up for the most part. This is the upper oil pan. As you can see here, these motors do have a vacuum pump built into it. It's driven off the crank. That's this guy right here. It's got this hose. This is so you can have power brakes. There's the lower oil pan. Like I said, the guy that I bought this from had taken this off and found a bunch of trash in there. It's all twisted up, beat up. He also used a screwdriver to pry it apart, so thank him for that. And then here's the part for the balance shafts, and then there's a little brace that just goes in front of it. This is not a girdle. This doesn't tie into the main caps at all. So this just bolts in these holes, or I'm sorry, these holes here. And it doesn't tie into the main caps at all. It just holds the two oil pan rails together, and that's all it does. These crank main caps, super weird. Look at this. So the first one here is numbered 4. The second one here is numbered 2. Third one's number 1. Fourth one's number 6. Last one, number 2. So I don't think that this like came apart and they got moved around, because I got 2 number 2s, a number 1 and a number 4, and then a number 6 for whatever reason. Not sure. Doesn't look like this motor's been taken apart at all. Not down to this level anyway, but interesting. I can't explain that. I don't have anything to support that, why it's like that. But here's the injectors. These are stock injectors. I looked them up. There's nothing fancy about these. They do have this quick disconnect for the returns on the top here, so don't pull all those. Let's show you what I'm talking about. This is the return line. So these run across the top of the injectors. Don't run all these, or take these clamps off of here, because they just pop off on the end of the injector there. So here's the rest of some parts here, the valve cover and whatnot. Here's the oil filter housing, bolts to the front. This has got coolant running through it as well. That serves as an oil cooler. It's got a little thermostat thing in here. Can't pull it out, but it's pretty neat. Let's see, what else? Oh, let me move on to the next one here. Alright, so like I was saying, I did put a degree wheel on this motor before I tore it apart, and I wanted to try to get the cam specs. I know I'm just a guy in a garage with a cam wheel or a degree wheel and a dial indicator, but I did get some specs, rough estimates, specs. So don't take this to, take it with a grain of salt, is what I'm trying to say. But as far as the intake duration, I did find that it measured out at 165 degrees of intake duration. Exhaust was right at 200. Valve lift was in the 320, 340 range. I had a hard time measuring valve lift because the lifter is hydraulic lifters, and I couldn't lock those solid. So my best guess is around 320, 340 lift, which is not a whole lot, but again, it is a stock motor. I did call around to a couple companies and see if I can get a regrind of that stock cam. because I feel like that's the biggest setback with these motors is compressor surge, trying to keep the thing out of, keep the turbo out of compressor surge. And you can't, the only way to do that is to flow more air through the motor. And so I need to flow more air through the cylinder head by increasing the valve lift. I think these ports are pretty big. Like I said, I've said in past videos, there's one port for each valve. So there's 8 intake valves, and there's 8 ports for the intake. So I think there's enough port area there. I think the valve train, as far as the cam specs, is our limiting factor. So I really don't foresee there being a whole lot of benefit from porting this out. Just put a good valve job on it, and I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be more than enough to do what we're trying to do to make 400 horsepower, you know. So I did get a hold of a company to do a regrind. It's going to be Brian Crower cams. They're based out of California. I did ship them off. They told me $450 to regrind the stock cams. I haven't got them back yet, but they said there's a 3-week turnaround time, so that's not bad. But I will be getting those back and throwing those in here. I'm trying to do some research on some valve springs and see if I can do any spring upgrades. These are pretty small springs, so I got to test the valve spring tension. I ordered a valve spring tension tester, whatever, to measure that. As soon as I get that in, I will measure the pounds it takes for these valve springs, and see if I can get some upgraded springs on here. They're just really small diameter, and there's not a whole lot available in this size. It's really like the side-by-side world and the cross rocket world. That's the size springs that are in this motor. So I want to see what I can do as far as sourcing some different springs for this. I might have to open up the spring pocket just to get a bigger diameter spring in there. They are, I think there's 6 or 7 mil valve stems, so it's real similar. It's also really similar to the Ford 5.0, the mod motors. So I know some of you guys aren't going to like hearing that, but it is, a lot of the valve train is very similar to that. So I could try to maybe cross over some parts and put some Ford parts in here, if that makes sense. Not necessarily Ford parts, but parts made for a Ford. But we'll be doing that, and that is the direction I'm going. Like I said, I'm going to be putting this back in the truck. I'm not deleting the truck, so don't ask me any questions about deletes. I don't know anything about that. But I'm going to see how well I can put this all together. I'm still working on this exhaust manifold as well. I think I got a turbo picked out, but you know, it's the money thing. I did just get back from this deployment, and I do have a couple bucks, but I'm not trying to spend that money. That money's already allocated to other things. So I will be taking some time and working on that. That being said, I'm going to finish this video off there. As far as future videos go, I'm going to tear this thing apart the rest of the way and do a little bit more research. Transmission. I'm also going to be putting I'm going to try to do the 6L90 swap in the canyons in Colorado's as well. I got the parts to do it. I did source those out, so look out for that too. I don't have a timeline on how long this is going to take me. It's expensive, and I don't have that kind of cash just laying around to dump money into it, but I will be doing that in the future. That being said, I also sourced the parts for a manual transmission. If you wanted to put a T56 behind one of these, I do have a bell housing and a case, because I was going to put that in this car, but obviously that motor's not going in this car anymore. So I'm not going to put a 6-speed in the truck. I thought about that too. I thought that'd be pretty sweet, but yeah, not going to happen. So going to go with the 6L90. I think that'll be more relevant to y'all anyway, for you guys that are wanting to do or thinking about upgrades or, you know, all that fun stuff. Anywho, yeah, I'm going to tear this motor apart the rest of the way, and I'll give you guys another update video as soon as I get those cams back and go from there. Cool. If you guys have any questions or you guys want me to highlight any areas in this motor or something I forgot, please drop a comment below. I'll answer it to the best of my ability. But thanks you guys for watching, and I'll see you around.